My name is Anna Roswell. I am 33 years old, and the guilt of my mother dying alone in that small room on the second floor of Maplewood Care Center in Dayton, Ohio is not something I have found a way to set down cleanly. I carry it differently now than I did in the first weeks after she passed, but I carry it. She was 67 years old. The illness had moved faster at the end than any of us had anticipated. Faster than the doctors had said it would. Faster than the trajectory we had been managing our lives around for the previous 8 months. My sister Rachel and I both lived 40 minutes away. We visited. We called. We told ourselves and each other that we were doing enough. We were not there when she went. The nurse called me on a Sunday morning. I called Rachel immediately, and she was already crying when she picked up, which meant someone had called her too, or she had known the way that people sometimes know. We drove to Maplewood together. We sat with our mother for a while in that small room with its one window and its single chair and the photographs we had brought to make it feel less institutional. We held her hands, which were already cool. We drove home, and we did not speak much. The funeral was on Thursday. Small. Our mother had outlived most of her friends, and what family remained was scattered and aging. Rachel and I stood beside each other the way we had stood beside each other our whole lives, close enough to touch. On Saturday, Rachel went back to Maplewood to collect our mother's things and clean out the room. I could not go. I had told Rachel I was not ready, which was true, and she had said she understood, which was also true. Rachel has always understood me in the direct, uncomplicated way of a sister who has known you since you were born. She was there for an hour before she called me. I knew from the first sound she made when I picked up that something had happened. Not her crying voice. I knew that voice, and this was different. This was the voice of someone who has been stopped completely by something and does not yet have words organized around it. "You need to come," she said. "Right now." "What is it?" I asked. "Rachel, what happened?" She couldn't speak. I heard her breathing and behind that the particular quiet of an empty institutional room. I got in my car. I drove to Maplewood in silence and walked down the hall I had walked down dozens of times in 8 months and pushed open the door of my mother's room. Rachel was sitting on the floor beside the bed. She was holding something against her chest. A wooden box, small and rectangular, the kind with a simple clasp on the front. Her eyes, when she looked up at me, were not frightened. They were full. "It was under the bed," she said, pushed all the way to the back. I almost missed it. She held it out to me. I took it. I sat down on the floor beside my sister, and I opened it. Everything I thought I knew about my mother's life shattered quietly and completely, and my whole body went still. But before I tell you what actually happened, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's begin. Our mother's name was Helen Roswell. She had been Helen Roswell for 67 years, which is to say she had been our mother's name, our grandmother's daughter-in-law's name, the name on the mortgage of a small house in Dayton where Rachel and I grew up. What I mean when I say that is this. I knew my mother as my mother, as the woman who made oatmeal every winter morning and who kept a paperback novel in her purse at all times and who sang off-key to the radio when she thought no one was listening. I knew her habits and her preferences, and the way she held a coffee cup with both hands, and the particular sound of her laugh. What I did not know, what neither Rachel nor I knew, was who she had been before she was our mother. Parents exist for their children primarily as parents. This is natural. This is perhaps inevitable. The life they lived before you arrived is a country you were never issued a visa to enter, and most parents, in my experience, do not think to invite you in. They answer questions when asked. They share what seems relevant. But the full texture of who they were before, the specific weight of what they carried, the choices that were never spoken aloud, the version of themselves that existed before the version you knew, most of that remains on the other side of a door that closes, permanently, when they go. My mother had kept that door very firmly closed. She was a private woman. Not cold, warm, actually, in a contained way that felt like warmth rather than reserve, but private. She did not share easily, and we did not push easily, and the arrangement had suited all three of us for as long as I could remember. The box was what was behind the door. It was 12 inches long and 8 inches wide, made of dark walnut wood with simple brass fittings, the kind of box that is not expensive, but is not disposable either. The kind you choose because you intend to keep what goes inside it for a long time. The clasp opened without a lock. Inside, arranged with a care that was itself a kind of communication, were the following things. A stack of letters, bound with a faded blue ribbon. Perhaps 30 of them. Written by hand on plain paper, the handwriting uniform and precise in the way of someone who has been writing the same hand for decades. A photograph. Black and white. The particular quality of photographs from the late 1970s, slightly soft at the edges. A young woman and a young man standing on what appeared to be the steps of a university building. The young woman was our mother. Younger than I had ever seen her in a photograph, 20 years old at most, laughing at something outside the frame with her whole face. The man beside her was tall and dark-haired, and had his arm around her shoulders, and was looking not at the camera, but at her. A small envelope, unsealed, containing a single folded piece of paper. A pressed flower, a yellow one, dried flat, its color faded to the pale gold of old paper. And at the bottom, beneath everything else, a journal. Small, cloth-covered, the kind that closes with an elastic band. Our mother's handwriting on the first page, and a date at the top of that first entry, September 1978, which was 2 years before Rachel was born and 4 before I was. Rachel and I sat on the floor of our mother's empty room and we read. I will tell you what we found without telling you everything because some of what was in that box belongs to our mother, and I am not willing to surrender all of it to the world even now. The man in the photograph was named Thomas. Our mother had met him in the fall of 1977 when she was a junior at Ohio State, and he was completing a graduate degree in architecture. They had been together for 2 years. 2 years that the journal described with a specificity and a fullness that I had never heard in my mother's voice about anything. Not because she was not capable of that fullness. The journal proved she was. The letters, Thomas's letters to her, kept in their entirety, proved it too. They were not famous people, and what they had was not a dramatic love story in the cinematic sense. It was quieter than that and more real. 2 young people who had found in each other something that the journal, in our mother's careful handwriting, described simply as the first place I ever felt entirely like myself. They had separated in 1979, not because the love failed. The journal was clear about that, and the last of Thomas's letters, dated October of that year, was clear about it too. His work had taken him to Boston. She had been offered a teaching position in Dayton. They were 22 and 24 years old, and the geography of their futures had not aligned, and they had made the decision that young people make when they are still learning that some distances cannot be maintained across. She had married our father 2 years later. She had been happy. The journal, which she had returned to periodically over the decades, said this plainly, and I believe it. Our father was a good man and she had loved him, and their life had been a good one. But she had kept the box. The pressed yellow flower, the journal told us, was from the first day Thomas had found her studying in the campus courtyard and had sat down beside her without being invited and had handed her a wild flower from the border of the garden path because, he said, she looked like she needed one, and he happened to have one, and it seemed like information the universe wanted him to share. She had kept it for 47 years. The small envelope, the unsealed one with a single folded piece of paper. Rachel opened at last. We both looked at it together. It was not a letter. It was a list, written in our mother's handwriting, undated. At the top it said, "Things I want my girls to know." Below that, in the careful, precise hand we recognized from birthday cards and grocery lists and the notes she used to put in our lunchboxes when we were small. You were never a consolation. You were the whole point. I loved your father truly, and without reservation. A life can hold more than one love and still be a whole life. I kept the box not because I was sad. I kept it because it was real, and real things deserve to be kept. Do not grieve for me more than is useful. Grief is for the living. Use it for fuel, and then set it down. You were the best thing I made. Both of you. Together. Below that, at the very bottom of the list, in handwriting that was slightly less steady than the lines above, written, I think, closer to the end, I was not alone. I had all of it. The whole beautiful, complicated everything. I was never alone. Rachel, And I sat on the floor of that empty room for a long time. The room that had seemed, when I thought about it in the weeks since her death, like a symbol of our failure, small, institutional, one window, one chair. The room where she had died, without us there. I looked at it differently, reading those words. She had sat in that room with 47 years of a full life lived on her own terms. She had sat with the journal and the letters and the yellow flower and the memory of a 20-year-old version of herself laughing on university steps with her whole face. She had sat with the knowledge of 2 daughters who had visited and called and who she had watched grow into people she was proud of without perhaps ever saying so with enough frequency or directness, because she was a private woman. She had not been alone. I had been carrying the guilt of her dying alone, and she had, in the careful handwriting of the list in the small, unsealed envelope, specifically addressed it. I was never alone. We took the box home. It lives now in Rachel's house, on a shelf, where she can see it. We talked about Thomas, briefly, and then at greater length. Rachel found him through an architecture firm in Boston. He is 70 now, retired, living outside the city. We debated for several weeks whether to make contact. Eventually, Rachel sent him a letter, a short one, introducing ourselves, telling him our mother had passed and that we had found the box and thought he should know she had kept everything. He wrote back within 2 weeks. A longer letter, handwritten on good paper. He said he was glad to know. He said our mother had been one of the most alive people he had ever met and that he had thought of her often over the years. He said the yellow flower. He remembered the yellow flower after 47 years had been a joke between them because she had told him once that she did not believe in grand romantic gestures, and he had decided that a single wilted wildflower from a garden path barely qualified. He said he was glad she had kept it. I am glad she kept it too. I am glad she had it, and I am glad my sister went back to clean that room, and I am glad she got down on her knees and looked under the bed and found the box pushed all the way to the back where a less thorough person would have missed it. Because what was in the box was not what I feared when Rachel called me with her voice shaking and no words ready. It was not grief. It was not regret. It was not evidence of a life unlived. It was a life, fully and privately and completely lived, offered to us at the end in the careful handwriting of a woman who wanted us to know that she had been there completely, that she had loved and been loved and kept what was real and set down what was finished and arrived at the end of it whole. Grief is for the living, she wrote. Use it for fuel and then set it down. I am working on it, Mom. I am working on it.